Right, so those Labour attack ads, they've gone quiet after 4 of them being dropped pretty much overnight after they were coming out almost daily, as they were being. And to my mind, that can only really mean one thing, and that is they've blown up somewhat in Labour's face. Have they? Well, the argument was by Team Teeth, why shouldn't we fight fire with the Tories? Why shouldn't we get in the gutter with them and fight dirty? And really the simple reason for that is the majority of the populace who do look to Labour when considering their vote expect Labour to be better than that. Starmer's lot have said, well, why should we be held to a higher standard than the Tories? And really the answer ought to be, well, why would you not be? Why would you want to be on their level? Bring yourself down to their level. Labour's eternally unsuccessful still refers to himself laughably as a Labour strategist, John McTernan, a man who I can't help but snark at because sarcasm is my knee-jerk response to stupidity, really. But he's praised these ads. He's pointed to the first of 2 polls that have come out since, showing Labour basically standing still right now. But he's crowing them as a great success. I'll come back to those polls in a moment. But he's also a man who has said you can get away with saying what you like in internal elections in response to Starmer lying to become Labour leader, so honesty and integrity mean nothing. And only a few months ago said that Labour is now a safe place for Thatcherites to return to. When Thatcherites should be the last people Labour, a real proper Labour party, for the many, not the few, for ordinary working class folks around this country, should want near their ranks. Yet clearly, these ads are designed to appeal to those such people. Still, Labour thinks it will retain the voter base it has, save those using the door as Starmer pointed people to who don't like his way of doing things. Many will continue to believe voting for him regardless of what he does will get the Tories out. To what end when he behaves no differently as sort out donors to fund Labour instead of ordinary members he clearly despises, who can go if they don't like things, who say so at conference, Labour's sovereign body he ignores. He's just a wannabe Tony Blair, just even more dislikable. And let's set the ads themselves aside for a minute. I've done other videos covering the vileness of the content of some of those adverts. Let's look instead at the responses to them now. Polling first. We'll come back to that. Polling. The first poll that came out, the one John McTernan has been cheerleading over, came from polling company Omnisis. Have you heard of them? They're not one of the big names, but they have, however, been remarkable for being the pollster giving Labour, via its methodology, because all pollsters have their own different methodologies, they've given Labour the highest leads of all over the Tories. And they've put this week Labour on 48%, up 2% over a week, and the Tories on just 25%, down 1 point massively there, isn't there? Huge majority territory if this were true. But like every other pollster, even they've shown Labour slip. Since at the end of last month, Labour were on 52% according to Omnisis, and the Tories were on 27%. The other major poll out was from the better-known Opinium. Their methodology also give Labour larger than typical leads for polling companies. They've polled Labour as being on 42%, up 1 point, and the Tories on 28%, down 2 points. So you can look at this on the face of it and say, Damo, Labour have gained in both of these. Hardly a sign the ads have failed. And to that, I can only respond that typical polling margins for error are plus or minus 3%. So both these headline results fall within margin for error. In other words, it simply shows Labour basically standing still. It hasn't on the face of 2, and you need to bear in mind this in comparison to other pollsters, very Labour favourable pollsters, shown to have made any real difference. In fact, if you dig into the data of the opinion poll a bit more, you discover that underlying the top-line voting intention are all sorts of other results, such as the fact the attack ads made people 17% less favourable about the Tories. Makes you think they were successful, in which case. However, they also found that 12% were less favourable regarding Labour too. The methodologies of more, or arguably more, critical polling companies is yet to come. We all wait for the likes of Survation, for example. Many still trust them the most, but fundamentally it is polling trends that tell the story, and we need more polling results than just 2 to see a trend here. On top of this, another pollster, Savanta, via their director, are now on record as saying it does seem that gone are the days of the 20-plus point Labour lead. I think that this is because there isn't a great deal between the two parties at the minute in terms of what they are presenting. No disagreement here whatsoever. Of course, polling stats like that are just based on cold calculations, the data and analysis thereof. What about tactics going forwards then? What people can now expect is that the general election, far more so than the upcoming local elections next month, there's going to be anarchy over people being barred from voting there. That'll be the biggest story of those elections next month, and how many people get blocked will bring into question the democratic mandate from them. I can only imagine the videos I shall be recording come the time those results come out. But going into the next general election, scheduled for autumn of next year, as we're currently being led to believe, Starmer has set the standard for how things are going to play out. And he set them out early, and he set it out very low. Tory standards of low. That's his integrity. The Tories will return in kind. Of course they will. You can only imagine the field day somebody like Linton Crosby, the Tories' go-to election guru, will have with somebody like Keir Starmer. Let's have a quick run through of some of Starmer's greatest hits that Crosby is almost certain to hit on, if not more. I'm sure you'll remember some that I haven't remembered. I've just rip these off the top of my head. Let's begin with the 10 pledges to get elected leader that he's ditched, and keeping his donors from that time hidden as well, bringing into question his honesty and his integrity. Then there's suspending Corbyn before finally denying him in the most insulting, underhanded way the right to stand as a Labour candidate in the seat he's defended for the last 40 years. The Tories will, of course, still attack Starmer as previously having tried to put Corbyn in power, despite Labour members, socialists especially, remembering Starmer was also somebody who took part in the chicken coup of resignations to force Corbyn out of the leadership within 6 months of him getting the gig. Then there's the Ford report into Labour racism that Starmer was forced to commission after the Labour leaks report that he hoped would pin anti-Semitism on the left and onto Corbyn, as the media narrative did, but it didn't. And so the report has been shelved, Martin Ford himself shunned by the Labour Party in response, and no action taken on any of its recommendations. So you know the Tories are going to hammer Labour over racism again. Then there's the authoritarian clampdowns on constituency Labour parties and members across the country. There has been the prescribing of various groups and expulsions of members of said groups, even of people who had once upon a time spoken to them and were no longer associated, because Starmer made such prescriptions retrospective, so as to purge as many left members as possible as part of his ongoing attacks. The left have referred to Keir Starmer as being Keir Stalin, or Keith Stalin, and you can only imagine the Tories are going to do just the same. There's this sneering at places in the north, like Coventry, over, or the Red Wall, let's call it more than the north, over a bin strike he should have supported, but then his responses to strikes has been pathetic for a Labour leader as well. You know, Tory MPs in those Red Wall seats are going to look at his moves like that and say, well, he doesn't care about you. He called Black Lives Matter a nonsense, undermining that moment he took the knee. Again, there's his integrity for you again. And that's not even touching on his very checkered history that is emerging as Director of Public Prosecutions, something Starmer continuously brings up. He might end up regretting that, because the Tories fundamentally can have a field day painting Starmer in all manner of ways as dishonest, as a liar, and they can back it up with evidence, because where Labour's attack ads largely accuse Sunak of stuff they cannot possibly back up. Called Sunak soft on child abusers, the very first attack ad they went on. When has Sunak ever said anything along those lines? A lot of this that I've levelled at Starmer, the hypocrisy, the lies, he said it all on camera. All the Tories have got to do is find the footage. But here's what he said before. Here's what he said 6 months later. You can't trust a word this man says. Why would you elect him to be Prime Minister? The closer we get to that general election, the bigger a liability Starmer is going to end up proving to be for Labour, and a gift for the Tories. And that's before we even get to something like the TV debates, where he'll end up making Theresa May look lively. All the charisma of plasterboard as he's got. And finally, there's the issue of credibility. I've been very critical in recent weeks of the lack of outspokenness by other Labour MPs of what Starmer's been up to, of what he's been doing and saying, presumably out of fear for their own seats. Again, that Stalin-esque streak, which, when it comes to the crunch, those seats seem to matter more to them than anything else. An exception to that, as proven in a piece in The Independent that he wrote that came out last night, is Barry Gardner. And he called his piece, by dehumanising the opposition, Labour undermines its own credibility. Who makes the point that to take on the Tories, Labour should be attacking their record in government, something they can clearly evidence. You would think as a barrister, Starmer would all be about the evidence, but it seems not. 13 years they've been in power, 13 years of austerity, of cost of living crisis. flatlining economy, pandemic mismanagement, so many stories of cronyism and corruption, and being on the take, not least the VIP lane for PPE procurement that has cost the public billions during that same pandemic. They were on the take while we were kissing goodbye to our loved ones or saying goodbye to them as they went to hospital, possibly to die alone. Then there's depressed wages, hardline policies restricting our freedoms to protest and to strike, the treatment of refugees, the desire to deport them. The list goes on and on and on. But instead of doing that, Starmer and co went after Sunak personally, and Barry Gardiner recognises that Starmer has invited the Tories to do just that with him now, because it's what we expect the Tories to do. They will always get in the gutter. They will always play dirty. They will always be filth. They won't lose voters by doing it either. They're happy to vote Tory regardless. But Labour voters are not the same. You can argue whether Labour should or should not fight fire with fire, but Labour have everything to lose by doing so, when people expect them, by and large, to be better than that. And if they're showing they aren't, is it any wonder that voter apathy is a significant danger going to the next general election? Is it any wonder it reinforces the belief amongst so many that Labour now are really no better than the Tories? To vote Labour in light of all of this, to be part of the Labour Party right now, actually, to vote Labour while Starmer is still leader, you're only going to make yourself part of the problem and never part of the solution, which can only come from voting for change. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.